Hebrews chapter 8. We'll try to move forward on this devotion. So hold your place there in Luke and turn over to Hebrews chapter 8. Page number 1718. And we just went live. My volume was up. All right, good deal. Appreciate that. Man. All right. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 12 says, "For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more." We've been going through looking at the topic of forgiveness and trying to do a couple of different devotions on the topic of forgiveness. I think this is what most people are actually looking to do when they say forgive. They don't actually want to forgive somebody. They want to remember it no more. There's a big difference. As I said before, I had a young man one day. If you remember last time we were here, I had a young man. His father asked me to counsel with him and was struggling with his son. His son was probably, I'm going to guess, if I can remember correctly, 12 to 14 years old at the time, had been in foster care. He was an adopted son, had some very hard things happen to him, things that I wouldn't even want to mention again, not even in, obviously in mixed company or even in not mixed company. I just wouldn't want to mention. There are things you don't need to. I think everybody can kind of understand what I'm talking about. And he asked me the question. He said, "Can you ever forget it?" He wasn't looking. He was honest. He was a very bitter young man. He was not looking to forgive anyone. Now, that's what he originally wanted to talk about, was the struggles he had and the problems he had dealing with it. And forgiveness is what everybody was kind of hoping would happen. But he wasn't interested in forgiveness. What he wanted is to forget it. He wanted to remember it no more. He didn't want it to be a fixture. When it says their sins and iniquities will I remember no more, it carries with it, that statement carries with it the thought of this: a fixture. All right, a fixture in one's mind. You could say it'd be like a landmark. You can travel around. And you'll remember if you're going somewhere you've traveled before and you can't remember exactly all the details of how to get somewhere, but you remember landmarks, you can easily get your way back to where you had to go. And you can even do it, and your wife will think you knew exactly what you're doing, and you're a great navigator. All you did is remember, I think I turned right. No, I didn't turn that way. I'll make a couple more left turns. She'll never know. She doesn't need to know. I'll just pretend like that was all part of it. We took a scenic tour, right? But you're looking for the landmarks. Now, if you do know where you're going with it, you have a well laid out road to that. This young man was not looking. He was not looking to forgive. He just wanted to remove in his mind that fixture, that landmark. And I'm not for removing landmarks, as the Bible says, good landmarks. I'm talking about those ones that are unrighteous, unholy. I'm talking about getting rid of those things in your life. He just wanted to get it to where he didn't dwell on that anymore, where what he thought about when he went to bed was not the same thing he thought about when he woke up, and it wasn't the same thing that consumed him throughout the day, and he didn't feel the need to turn to drugs or alcohol to be able to dull his mind so that he could not focus on that anymore, and he could focus on other things. He just wanted simply to forget it. And he asked me the statement after he named about 12 or 14 events that any one of them would be horrific in somebody's life, much less the totality of all of those in one person's life. And he said, "Can you ever forget it?" And I said, "No, you can't." I said, "You want me?" I said, "I know that's not the answer you want." And when you talk to people, I know that's not the answer we like to hear, but we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Our minds are so amazing that I find it interesting that if you got saved a little later in life, you probably grew up listening to music and things you ought not to, right? And you could be walking through a mall. You can be walking to a parking lot and hear somebody's radio playing. You could be in an elevator if you're old enough. That was meant to be funny. Y'all can laugh, right? And you'll hear that song from your childhood, and only a couple notes of it will play, and you instantly remember you remember that song, possibly the first time you heard it. You remember memories that song takes you back to. You can walk through somewhere and smell one fragrance. If you're Dr. Keaton, the right one, it'll take you out, right? But if not, you can smell one fragrance, one ingredient in a dish, and it has that smell that reminds you of something your grandmother made back from when you were a little kid, and it instantly takes you back, and you remember not only that food, you can almost taste it, and your mouth will start watering over tasting it. You'll start longing, as David did, for that water at the well there, and you start having not flashbacks, but remembering of it. And I told him, I said, you want the mind that God gave you that can remember things and bring back full memory of everything off of one sound, three notes played, or one smell. And you want that, you expect that mind to not be able to recall some of the most damaging and hurtful moments in your life? Those are some of those things are minuscule. I mean, you're talking about one song out of a million you probably heard. And it can draw you back all the way to that point in your life. Your mind is not made that way. Your mind is an amazing thing. It's better than any computer that man has ever devised. I said, you can't. Like I told him, though, there is something better than forgetting, and that is getting victory. When God gives you victory over it and he shows you that path forward, what ends up happening is you no longer have one thing as a fixture in your mind. You now have victory in its place. And every time Satan tries to bring that back up and to tear you down and draw your testimony back down to nothing, to an ineffective state where you can't be used of the Lord anymore, every time you do that, you can remember the victory that God gave you over that. It's a new fixture in your mind. And that's what your mind, I think of the word fixture there, it fixates on the victory that God gave you as opposed to the harm caused by sin in the world. So I went on to try to teach him a little bit about how to get victory in his life. And I explained it to him like this, and I'll give it to you. I hope it'll be a help to you. If I could give, well, I don't have time to go into all of it, but I'll give you this. If you had a problem that money could solve, what would be your need?
Money.
Not complicated. It'd be money, right? Not complicated. And if I gave you a map, and I said at the end of this map is a stack of a 100-pound stack of $20 bills. That'd be $1 million, by the way. 100 pounds of $20 bills is $1 million, from what I understand. I don't know that for certain, but that's what an officer said one time, so I trust him. I figure he's probably caught a few drug dealers and didn't have time to count it out, so they just weighed the money. And I would assume he knows what he's talking about. I don't know. I've never had $1 million to weigh to see. But if somebody wants to give that to me, I would be glad to try it and do it scientifically, meaning I would repeat it multiple times to see if I get the same outcome. So if you want it tested, just let me know and give me about 300 pounds worth of $20 bills, and I'll weigh it in 100-pound increments and count it out.
Right.
And I'll tell you the results. Won't give you the money back, but I'll tell you the results. Amen? I said, but if you had a problem where money could solve it, that map would be very valuable to you. And I asked him, what would you want? Would you want to look at the map? He said, well, yeah. I said, if I said you could go a step further and you could have the map or a copy of the map, well, he'd want the map itself and then make copies of it just in case. And I told him, I said, what if every time you had another need for money, you could go back there and there would be money in that exact same spot. Every time you took $1 million, you could go back there and there'd be another $1 million right there on the X on the map. Every time you had a need, you could go back to it. I said, you'd want that map, you'd want a copy of it, you'd memorize it, you might even want to build your house next to it. I mean, why bother? Buy the property next to it and just walk next door and get it. You'd guard it. You wouldn't let anybody take that that map away. You wouldn't let anybody damage that spot. You wouldn't let anybody go near that spot. You'd want to protect it in your life because it would solve that same problem. If it ever came up again, it would solve that same problem. I said, your problem is you're trying to forget everything instead of forgiving them. If you'll learn and understand what forgiveness is, and we don't have time to get to it today, but maybe next time we do, we'll get into the life of Joseph, and I'll try to maybe help you a little bit with that. If you'll get to where you understand forgiveness and just offer forgiveness and learn more as you go and more as you go. Start loving others. Find others that are in need and love them like Christ loved them. And if you'll start doing that, you'll build a roadmap to where that's not the fixation of your mind anymore, but God's victory that He gave you is. And every time Satan throws it up in your face again, you'll know, no. I've already overcome this. It held me down. It held me a prisoner in my life, like Nelson Mandela. And I'm not going to try to claim. There's a lot about the man I don't like. There's a lot about him I think is something we can admire and look at and study. But when he left the prison, a reporter asked him, "Do you hate those people who your captives?" And he said, "No." They asked him, "Why don't you hate them? They held you falsely in prison for all these years." He said, "Because they had me physically locked up for all those years of my life. They will not continue to have me mentally locked up for the rest of my life." Exactly. And that's what unforgiveness does. It leads to bitterness. And I believe we're in one of the most bitter cultures in our nation today. We can't even get to a point now where we can agree to disagree without hating each other. I used to be one that would, somebody could bring up politics. I didn't care what their politics were. I'd be okay with them talking about it and all. Now I'm at the point sometimes I'm not even interested in hearing it because people are just going to be at each other's throats. And it's not healthy. It's not wise. We're in one of the most unforgiving cultures out there. And I think a lot of us say, "Oh, I forgave. I want to forgive them. I want to forgive them." All we really want to do is be selfish and just forget. And I get that. And when I say selfish there's legitimacy to that statement, but it's a hard statement to hear. It really is. It's not meant to be offensive, to hurt. But who are we to not forgive others when we've been forgiven of such a great debt? Who are we to not forgive? If you ever just stop and think about who, get alone sometime and do like David. Search me. He wasn't asking God to search him because he thought, I've been hiding some stuff from God and I'm pretty sure God doesn't know. But I'll tell you what, God, search me. Go ahead, God, search me. I haven't let you search me before. It wasn't for God's learning or God's understanding. Just like when Adam and Eve hid and he said, "Where art thou?" It wasn't like God didn't know where he was at. He was trying to get them to a place where they wanted to be sought of the Lord. So he wanted to get them to a place where God could search them out. He was saying, "God, search me out and show me who I am." I've learned you can tell a lot about another person and about people's personalities and things that are going on around you. If you're willing to let the Lord search you and show you just who you are. But I can tell you, when you let God search you and show you who you are, your opinion of yourself goes extremely low. Forgiveness does become a whole lot easier because you realize just what you're capable of, and just who you are. And you start to realize how great of a debt we were forgiven of. I hope that helps you. We'll stop there. There's no way. I'm not even going to try to go and read anything about Joseph today.